A native of Selbu, Norway, Brynhild Polsdatter Storset immigrated to the United States in 1881 at the age of 21 and changed her name to Belle, strange remains reports. 3 years later, she married Mads Albert Sorensen, and the pair opened a candy shop in Chicago, Illinois. As reported by Sci-Fi Wire, the couple soon had 2 children, and Belle seemed to be living the American dream. However, over the following years, she would be accused of murdering at least 25 people, including 2 husbands and at least 2 of her children. Although she eventually teamed up with a man named Ray Lamphere, Belle generally worked alone. The first suspicious incident involving Belle had to do with the family's candy shop, which burned to the ground while they were experiencing financial difficulties. As the shop was insured, Belle and Mads ultimately benefited from the alleged accident. The couple also collected insurance money after the sudden deaths of their children, who reportedly died from colitis. Shortly after, Mads also died under suspicious circumstances. As reported by Sci-Fi Wire, Mads was insured under 2 overlapping policies at the time of his death, and Belle was the sole beneficiary. Although her involvement in the fire, the deaths of her children and the death of her husband were never proven, Belle left the state and moved to Indiana under a strong cloud of suspicion. And using insurance money, she purchased a farm that she reportedly turned into her own personal killing grounds. Belle eventually married a man named Peter Gunness. Within 1 year, Peter's infant child, who he had with his former wife and Peter himself, were dead. Belle Gunness, who collected the life insurance, was once again considered a suspect. But as reported by Sci-Fi Wire, her involvement in the deaths was never proven. Following Peter's death, Belle began luring wealthy men to her farm using personal ads, which were placed in newspapers throughout the Midwest. In the ads, she expressed an interest in joining fortunes and requested that the men meet her in person as opposed to written correspondence. According to reports, most of those men eventually disappeared. In 1906, 49-year-old Andrew Helgelien answered a personal ad in a Norwegian-language newspaper called the Minneapolis Tidende. The ad was placed by 46-year-old Belle Gunness, who sought a partner in her LaPorte and Bio farm. According to the ad, Gunness was seeking an investor who could potentially become something more. The pair traded letters for 18 months, and the potential business opportunity evolved into the promise of a life together. In surviving letters, Gunness professed love for Helgelien, who expressed a desire to relocate for her, but was delayed by family matters. "We shall be so happy when you once get here," she wrote in one. "I place you higher in my affections than anyone on this earth," she declared in another. All the while, she made 2 desires clear: that he should bring all his money, not leaving a cent behind, and that he should tell no one so their new life together could be a surprise for their families. After a year and a half, on January 3, 1908, Helgelien finally arrived. 3 days later, the pair went to the local bank, where Helgelien cashed 3 certificates of deposit totaling $2,839, approximately $75,000 in today's dollars. It took 5 days for the money to arrive, and 3 days after that, the couple came to collect. Helgelien was prepared to accept a check, but an agitated Gunness demanded cash. They left, and that was the last time Helgelien was ever seen alive. After 18 months of intense seduction, Gunness finally got her wish: to murder Andrew Helgelien and steal his money. Helgelien was just one of the many lonely men who answered Gunness's ads hoping for a quiet life with a salt-of-the-earth woman, and instead was drained of his money, murdered, butchered, and buried in pieces on Gunness's farm. Belle's live-in farmhand, Ray Lamphere, would ultimately be her downfall. As reported by Pulp International, Lamphere realized Belle was running a deadly scam, but he still fell in love with her. After they had a falling out, Ray reportedly threatened to expose Belle's criminal behavior. She responded to the threats by making Ray leave the farm and attempting to have him admitted to an asylum. In April 1908, Belle's home was burned to the ground in an apparent act of arson. 3 of the bodies discovered in the home's basement were positively identified as her children. The 4th victim, who was a woman, was assumed to be Belle. However, the woman's head had been removed and was missing from the scene. The head was never found, but as people searched the property, they started finding other body parts. On May 3rd, they found a severed human arm that turned out to belong to Andrew Helgelien. Further digging turned up a jumble of putrefied body parts, naked torsos wrapped in burlap, heads, arms and legs scattered around, including the remains to Gunness's adopted daughter Jenny Olsen. Gunness had told people Olsen had gone away to school in California. Ray Lamphere was immediately named a suspect in the deaths of Belle Gunness and her children, and was eventually arrested for murder. During his trial, Ray claimed that Belle killed and disposed of a number of men on her property. As reported by Pulp International, Ray said Belle was solely responsible for killing and dismembering her victims. However, he admitted helping her dispose of the bodies. According to Ray, Belle killed the men for financial gain in the form of insurance payments or the cash and possessions they left behind after they were dead. Although he admitted to assisting Belle in her deadly scheme, Ray denied any involvement in her murder. In fact, he claimed the body found in Belle's basement could not have been her because the woman was 6 inches shorter than Belle. Ray said Belle killed her 3 children and a local woman and left their bodies in the basement of her home. She then allegedly disposed of the woman's head in a swamp. According to Ray, Belle convinced him to burn down the house and meet her at another location. Although he said they both planned to escape together, Belle allegedly never showed up. Nevertheless, Pulp International reports Ray's claims have never been proven, and Belle was never heard from again. Ray was ultimately acquitted on the murder charges, but found guilty of arson. 1 year after his conviction, Ray died of consumption while incarcerated.